Welcome back to the Salted Orange Podcast. My name is Matthew,
My name's Luke.
and we are here again with another episode into 2024. We've done one already, so if you missed last week's episode, if it was 2 weeks ago's episode, that's not even how you say that, but if you missed that episode, go back and watch it. It was a really cool episode about salvation. So we hope you enjoyed that. Keep giving us comments about like what you want to hear. We've had a few come in that have kind of expressed what they want to hear and what they like hearing from us, so we want to hear more of those kinds of things so we can talk about those more and explore your interest as well as some of our interest with religion. But today we are talking about hospitality in the church. So I'm going to ask you, Luke, how do you think the church is doing hospitality wise with welcoming in new people and welcoming in people that already go to church?
I think it just depends on which church you're going to, I
Oh yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to, I think the non-denominational people are doing a lot better than the denominational people. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It does depend on like what church you're going to and how the church focuses on that ministry specifically. For me, I've noticed a lot of churches think they do hospitality really well when they're actually incredibly poor in that field.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh yeah, we just go up, say hi, how you doing, cool. That's a connection. No, that's like you're pushing that person, just like, hey, we just want to say hi because that's what we're supposed to do as humans. But it's not really building a connection or talking about anything. It's just, hey, we see that you're here. Thanks for coming. We hope you stay forever and give us all your money. Like that's what it comes across as me.
I see. I think that some churches are even bad at that, like talking, just saying hi. Because I've been to a couple churches where like you walk in and they don't even say hi to you. Like you're just like, okay, you're here. You gonna give some offering or something,
Yeah.
as you would say. But um, I think can you tell me about like more like that deeper connection thing that you would want?
Yeah. So like I had a conversation this week. We had a new family in to service, and I don't. They stopped me because I was helping with the choir stuff, and they're like, "Oh, we really like the choir. It just needs to really be more people in it because we were it was an off Sunday. There wasn't that many people there. We had like a couple of people in the choir, so it was kind of empty up there. And they're like, well, you could get some more people, and so we were like, okay, well, let's imagine what this more people would look like. And I'm like, well, we have more people on other days. It just happens to be that this is a Sunday that we don't have as many people because they're out doing other things, or they're out at a different church, or they only come every other week or so that we can get them. But they're like, oh, we could go like talk to the kids at high schools, try to talk to music instructors, see if they would have like people who want to come in and get like um, a chance to work with our music director to experience what church music would be. So we had a pretty good conversation. I don't think it was like groundbreaking and bringing them into the church kind of thing, but it was like a good conversation about just music as one aspect of the church. And I think for us, the human connection when we're talking about really getting to know somebody, you have those like icebreaker kind of conversations that you have. It's like, hi, I am this person. Oh, cool. What do you do? I do this. Okay, cool. I do this. What do you like to do? Oh, my hobbies are this. What are your hobbies? And you talk about like these really basic level things that like you go on Facebook and find out about this person. But the real connection that I think we need to build as church goers and as people in church, especially if we're trying to get new people in, is those people are looking for an outlet to express their faith in their life, especially because faith is such a big part of a lot of people's foundational basic influences in how they live. They want to find that connection. They want to fit in with the church. So you want to talk about, okay, what do you think about, you want to have conversations about God, like similar things like we're talking about on the podcast. Like, what do you think about God? What are you questioning right now? Why are you coming to church? Like, what are you looking for? How can we feed you with um, spirituality and your relationship with religion, rather than, hey, How you doing? Good to see
Yeah.
you. Like it needs to be
So,
more in-depth conversation, not just like entry
mhm.
level stuff. You need to get to the root of the person and understand who they are, rather than just hoping that they're gonna come back and keep trying it, because it takes one person building a really good connection with them the first time coming back. Sorry, the first time coming, that they'll come back and they'll try it again. They'll be like, okay, well, maybe there's some more people like this person. And you have to be that if you make that connection, you got to be like, hey, welcome back in. Let's go talk with my friend John over here, who's got this conversation about like, if it's the people that I was talking to, he's like, let's go talk about him about like music and playing like instruments and like all that stuff and what he likes about the church and what they're doing with music. Maybe what you want to see different or what you like.
Yeah, my mom will always say that's our like we have a job as like we have to be that one person that will talk to that person and get them like almost like you be the introductory person to the church. Because if you're able to do that, then you can connect people to other people. But I would say that um, one thing that I like but I don't like is sometimes people want to get involved before they want to start talking about God. You know what I'm saying? And so I think it can be very. It turns into a more of a community thing than a like God moment. I would say.
Mhm. Yeah, I think you brought up a really good point about relationships, because when you think about any relationships that you're building, like you're either forced into that situation, like you have to be in that spot, like you're at a job or something, you have to like interact with these people on a daily basis, or it's like, hey, I have a friend that I would like to introduce you to because I think you two hit it off and you'd be good friends. Like you always have that person who's going to introduce you to other people. And so
Mm-hmm.
that not only requires us to have the hospitality of the people who are coming in for the first time, but also have hospitality towards the people that are already there. Because we can't recommend people if we don't know the people that are in our building already.
Mm-hmm. We did a thing in our church, and this was just because you really didn't know the people sitting on the other side of the church.
Right.
So we did this thing where everybody had to wear a name tag, and then you had
Mm,
to like actually, see their name on their chest, so you could actually like have a conversation with them. Because a lot of times, if you know someone's name, it's a lot easier to talk to them than it is to just say, "Hey, bud," Because I have this weird thing where I hate where people call me buddy. Buddy is like something I like. I'm like, I'm not your buddy. Like,
I'm not your buddy friend. I'm
unless
not your pal guy.
yeah, like, unless they're like an older person, like if an older person says that, then I'm like, that's fine. But like if someone my age is like buddy, I'm like, I ain't your buddy. Like that's something like an old person would say. Like that's weird. But back on like if we if we can learn people's names, like it, I guess mentally people will be like, well, they actually care about me if they're actually like putting that effort to
Mm,
remember my name. I'm not very good with names. I teach high school, and I still have trouble with people's names, and it's funny because I'll be like, "I'll never learn your name." That's what I tell them, and then like when I do learn their name, they're like, "Whoa!" Then they start like having like an actual like conversation with me. They like actually start liking me, I would say.
mm,
But I think if we could, start doing that in church, it doesn't have to be like a big way to attract people or hospitality wise. Like if you just start having genuine connections, like people will want to come back.
mm.
If, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's the goal of the church, is you're wanting to build a community, not build oh yeah, we just show up at the same place. What's up, dude? How you doing? Like that doesn't do anything. You want to build a community of people who are going to walk your faith journey with you, and you have to know those people to accomplish that. Like there is a precursory step to get to the deep stuff, like faith walking with somebody.
Hmm.
You have to know that person pretty well to get to that point, because otherwise they're not going to open up to you fully. They're not going to be like, well, I'm struggling with, like, maybe they're struggling with like addiction or something like that. It's like you're not gonna go up to that person who you don't know in the church. Is like, so why are you coming to church? Well, I'm gonna struggle with addiction. That's why I'm coming. Like, I mean, maybe if you've like worked through like AA sessions and stuff like that, but most people aren't just gonna come up and like spill their guts to you just
Mm-hmm.
on frame one. They're gonna have to take some time to get to know you and trust you, and then and the important part is keeping that trust too. You can't just go around, well, did you hear so and so came to church? That guy's an alcoholic. Why did he come to church? It's like
Mm-hmm.
he's such a terrible person. Like, I guess he's at least trying to get, but we can't be judging people like that either.
Mm-hmm.
And you said something else that I'm trying to remember because it sparked an interest in my mind. Um, oh yeah, because you were talking about the name tags, and I actually did a sermon a couple. It's probably been a month or so ago now about knowing who you are, because I think that's an important part of church. And I'm like, we do name tags every week. I wear a name tag every week, even though everybody in that building knows who I am, because I've been
Mm-hmm.
preaching. I've preached sermons. I've been helping out with all these other things. They know who I am. They don't have to even like read my name tag, but I wear it because I'm like, you should be wearing your name tag too, because no
You're
matter,
setting an example.
yeah, because I'm like, I'm one of the people in the church that you're gonna be like, oh, I know who you are already, without even reading my name tag, and I might not know your name because we haven't had a conversation. But I told him, like, what if I take off my name tag? You might know who I am, but like, what if the person across the room takes off their name tag? Do you know who they are? Do you know what their name
Mm-hmm.
is? Like, how are we not connecting with those people that are sitting in the same room as us, experiencing the same faith? It's like, you could even just have a conversation. Like, we have a space after worship service that you could go down to the fellowship hall and you can have conversations with people. Like, there's coffee, there's snacks. Like,
We have that
come
too.
have a conversation. I think most churches do, because
Mm-hmm.
even if it's just having a conversation, well, I didn't like this, or I like this about the service day, and this is how I was fulfilled. But people aren't having those conversations that need to happen.
Well,
Um,
I think so. I think that they're not using that effectively in any church.
right.
But I think the way that you fix that is that you have trustworthy people in the church go in there and have those like conversations with the like if it's your pastor who leads it, have
Hmm.
them go in there and do that. So that way you're showing people that it's not bad to have thoughts and opinions about God or about your church service or about someone in your church. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Because I think there people are afraid to just go in there and like spill their guts to like someone that you know the rest of the church may not even be able to do that. So like if
Hmm.
a new person comes in and they're like, "Oh, well, I can't do that," and I'm like, "Well, it's because the people in the church can't even do that." So
Yeah.
um, I guess we need to get rid of this fear of like you know we're not that good at hospitality sometimes, so we need to like work on like how are we attracting people to these things that are really hard to do. We talked about, I think it was our second or third episode, we talked about baptism and stuff like that. Uh,
Hmm.
we're not attracting people to these things either because they're scary. Like, we don't, we talked about making it like more approachable and stuff like that. And that's a part of attracting people. We need to attract people to like these like very serious topics and tell them it's okay to like have that quiet time to talk about it. One thing that our pastor did when he came, because in the Methodist church, we have pastor change every so often. Well, we had this one pastor. He came and the first couple weeks, he scheduled all these meetings where, but it was like not at the church. It was at people's houses,
Hmm.
and it
Yeah.
was just kind of ask them questions about the church. What's their vision and stuff like that. And like I thought that was a great way to like welcome people. And anyone could come to these. It didn't just have to be church members. It was just at random people's houses,
Mm. Okay.
and it was a good way to like, welcome people to talk about, you know, church stuff or like Christian stuff without having them in that scary church, mindset. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm. Yeah, my dad did something similar, where it's like instead of going to somebody's house, he invited them over to the parsonage, which if you're not familiar with that term, it's like the house that the church has that they keep the pastor in while they're serving there. Um, Churches like the Methodist Church have to have those places because pastors are itinerant, like Luke said, that they go around every couple of years. Like, you're only You're not even guaranteed to be there every after a year. You could be moving again. So it's just a space for the pastor to come in and stay while they're leading this congregation. But anyway, my dad would like bring every family over or bring individuals over to the parsonage. Like some of them, they built that parsonage like hundreds of years ago. They've never been inside of it. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
come over to where I'm staying. Let's break bread. Let's talk about what you want to see, those visions of the church. So I think that's one thing that Methodism does well with when it comes to facilitating new pastors into the space. But how often has that happened with other churches that don't change pastors as much? Are we doing an orientation about getting to know each individual person, or are we just like expecting them to go, here you go, this is what we want, do it? Like, here's our board telling you what we want, do it. Not like knowing the people at all.
Mm-hmm. I which this is something that I'm gonna dog Methodism just for a little bit. I think one thing that Methodism does terrible is there's such a separation between the leadership and the people sometimes. Which I don't know if that's just Methodism, that could be
It's every
other
church.
denominations, but I just have noticed a lot in a lot of the Methodist churches I went into. It's been a lot of like, you got your leadership up here and then your people, and they don't really know what's going on. And so I think that is another way that we're not attracting people to our churches, is because the leadership is like almost like this, like they make all the decisions and the church doesn't get to make any of the decisions. So I'm like, well, I thought the church was supposed to be, the people. And so I think that's one thing that is I think these churches could work on. But
Yeah.
I would say that I think churches, which you may think differently than me, I think some churches do a good job at attracting people. But some people would put a bad opinion on it because they would say, "Oh, you're like, let's think about like if they're making like you're having all these events and you're trying to advertise your church. So like you're saying, okay, we're gonna have basketball every Wednesday night. Well, you're not, getting them in a church space. Like you're having it at the church, but you're not getting them in a church mindset. And some people would think that's bad because you're attracting them for the wrong reason.
Mhm.
And I just want to kind of hear your opinion on like, do you think that like we attract people for the wrong reason? You know what I'm saying?
I think you can, but
Hmm.
there's, see, I'm always like middle of the road on any like serious topic because I'm like, I can see both sides. It's like, yeah, you are right. It is bad just to get them in for doing basketball. And let's use that, keep using that example. Basketball Wednesday night. They just want to play basketball. Okay, well, that's bad because, they're not generating anything for our facility. They're just coming in and using what we have, which, part of our mission, but we're not getting it. Yeah, church is business. At the end of the day, church is business.
Yeah.
Like, we have to be getting something back. It's like if you just like, oh, you go into a business fair, you pass out pamphlets and stuff. It's like, if none of those respond to you, have you done your job? No. You need to build that connection so they want to come and be a part of your
Hmm.
business, or come and sponsor your business, or come and purchase goods from your business. So that's the other side of it. Yes, it's bad to just get them in the building, but yes, it's good to get them in the building because it might spark interest. It might create those connections. But you have to build that connection with somebody who's actually there. Like, if you're doing that in a way that it's only like community members outside of the building, and you don't have anybody in the build, you don't have a number of people inside the building that can talk about what's going on.
Hmm.
It's like, that's a problem.
I
you
mean,
could
for
you could
me,
you could use that, like, you can use that basketball thing and be like, oh, hey,
yeah.
we got a Bible study tomorrow night. You come back tomorrow. We got
Hmm.
some pizza. There's a Bible study. Come hang out. We'd love to talk to you about that, whichever scripture lesson you're working with.
You know how you fix the bad? So like the people who are making it a bad thing, you know how you fix that? You tell those people, okay, you got to be there with them. They're saying that because they're seeing it from an outside perspective. They're not saying it from being there. And so I think that anyone who thinks that, well, they're just not being involved because we have pickleball at our church, and our pastor goes to it. Now we haven't. I mean, I don't know because I don't really know all the people there yet. I've only went like once or twice, but some of those people, like, just because the pastor's there, might have those kind of conversations. You know what I'm saying?
Mm,
So, like, if you are giving them a chance to have those conversations, then you're doing positive attraction, like positive
right.
hospitality for your church. And so I think that's where the church needs to move to towards is like being more of like the community uses your space and then you use the people coming from the community to grow your church.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying?
There's a difference between being famous and being infamous. You
Mhm.
want to be famous. You don't want to be. You want to be known for the good things and not the bad things, and you want to be able to build that positive thing. I did struggle with one thing you said, and it's the pastor has to be there for those conversations to happen. Honestly, I'm in the mindset of the pastor shouldn't be the one doing the
Well, yeah, I
evangelism.
don't think that either.
Specifically, like if we're gonna talk Methodism, the pastor's not a part of that church for a long period of time. Not in more
Mhm.
like community style churches or um, other places that don't rotate pastors as much. You know, your pastor might be there for a couple decades. Then they're part of the community, which makes sense for them to be doing things like that. But it can't just be if we're having the pastor be our chief executive or CEO. If they're
Mhm.
our CEO, they're our spiritual influence. They are our educational resource, our prime educational resource. They are our outreach committee chairperson. They are our person who is dealing with, training and dealing with leadership within the church. They're doing the job of five people right there. And that's not even talking about all the rest of the duties, like talking about finances or running boards or doing chairing committees or being on committees or anything like that. We're asking one person to do way too much job for what we're paying them. Like you want to
Mhm.
you want to drop a couple $1 million and have me do all that stuff. I'm glad to, but I'm not gonna walk in and be like, all right, well, I got to do these 20 things because they're 20 jobs, and you hired me to do 20 jobs. Like we're human. We can't.
Mhm.
And I think that's really what I'm trying to target. Is like pastors are not like these pedestal things that are like trophies that you show up on a pedestal. They are people that need the space to be people too. So
Mhm.
when they show up to events, like they show up to pickleball, they might just show up to pickleball, play pickleball. They don't
Well, I mean, that's what our pastor
necessarily need to
does.
be the pastor.
Mhm.
And they should
Um.
not influence, like it's nice that they influence people when they're there, but they need to also be the influence of the person when they're not there. Because
Mhm.
we do fake Christianity when we're not the same person all the time. If like we're changed by the pastor being in this situation versus the pastor not being in the situation, the pastor not being there is not us doing what we need to be doing.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have a feeling that like um, there's some ministries that like we do that like only like three people do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
there, I mean, you get burnout and stuff like that. But um, if you have, you know, I think what churches need to do is have more people get involved. Um, if you really want to grow your church, you have to make an effort.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was talking with someone the other day that is having their children's ministry is having a hard time, and she asked this question. She said, "You know, you either want a children's ministry or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
There's no ifs, ands, buts about it." And so, you either want your church to succeed or you just want to like show up. You did a sermon a couple of months ago about just showing up, and I think that is one problem that I mean I think that's the reason we're having so much problem with hospitality, is people just aren't making an effort. Uh, it's my pastor makes he's been doing a lot of these sermons recently. He does a lot of these like you know, are you ready to take that step? Are you ready to take that journey? You know, are you ready to help the church? You know what I'm saying? Are you ready to get involved? And so I was like, you know, I mean, I like his sermons when he does that because like, you know, they're kind of repetitive, but also some people need to hear that multiple times because,
Mhm.
um, I I don't want to say they have thick skulls, but
They do.
sometimes you
I'll say
sometimes you
it.
just have to get through it. Like you either want your church to succeed or you might as well just close your doors, as I say.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Um,
remember I preached for like 6 months straight on the topic of love just because I'm like, I'll stop preaching about it when you get it.
yeah.
Until you get it, I'm gonna keep. I left that church still preaching about it because I never finished. They never got it. I'm like, you guys need to understand that what you are doing is not a love oriented ministry. It's we're doing this because we can do this, or we
Mhm.
have done this. It's not love oriented. So you got to think about that.
But I just hospitality is so big for me because like there's so many churches that think they're doing the right thing. They think they're talking to everybody. They have such a false premise
Hmm.
of hospitality. Um, but really, a lot of these churches only have 4 people running their whole hospitality ministry. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? They have 4 people attracting all these people. Well, what happens when one of those people has like a spiritual heartache or spiritual dilemma and they don't want to come back to church? Well,
Hmm.
you lose half those people because what you've created is church or is people followers, not God followers.
Right.
And so I think what churches need to do is get more people involved. And you just need to be honest with people. You need to say, hey, we need you guys to be here. If you want a church to happen, you need to be here. You don't need to like, sugarcoat it. I think churches sugarcoat it too much. They say, you know, oh, come out. We need you. Like something like that. No, you need to like have a list and say, okay, Jimmy, John, all these other people, you need to be here. Because if you are not there, then the church is going to not have a good hospitality outlook.
Hmm.
And that
Like
is
we
my
solved that.
preaching moment for the day.
We could solve the problem of getting people to do things in the church. We would have a very lucrative business.
Hmm.
Because there, it's yeah. There was I remember a sermon from my great uncle, and he always would say, "There's 4 people who work in the church. There's somebody, everybody, nobody, and anyone. We're all looking for anyone to do anything. No, nobody does it because nobody's doing everything.
Hmm.
And when nobody does everything, the church crumbles.
Hmm.
Like there's anybody can do it, everybody can do it, everyone that has access to do it. Nobody does it, and we need somebody other than nobody to be running the church. Because again,
I
back to
think.
that pastor model, like we're doing 20 things, 20,
Hmm.
we're doing so many things that it's impossible for us to be that person that's doing everything.
So I think the way you see a church decline is as soon as you see one person doing everything.
Not
That's when you'll
even one
start to see a
person.
church.
Like you can see like 10 people doing it. It depends on the ratio of the people to the church. If you have
Yeah.
like 100 people, if 10 people are doing everything, that's a dead it's 1 to 10.
Hmm.
That's a dying church. You have 10 people and 2 people are doing everything, dying church. You need, I would say, probably like 80-75% of the church actively doing stuff in the church to make that church actually keep staying alive, because we already talked about it. The youth are not coming back. Like they're
Hmm.
already going out the door. We haven't seen a youth. Most churches are losing their youth, unless you're reinventing things, which is great. And share those with us in the comments below. I'd love to hear about it because that's my specific field. Um, but you're losing all these people. They're not coming back. And what are you doing at that point? Like you have it. That's a timeline. Like there is an expiration date of the people that are in that building that will happen. If you're not replenishing that or not getting more people in that can help replenish that,
Hmm.
I'm sorry, we're not gonna have a church in 20 years. That's just what's gonna be happen. That's
Money only
just what's gonna
lasts for
happen.
so long, as I say. Money only lasts for so long.
Yeah, That's true.
Because there are some churches that only stay open because they have a huge amount of money behind them
I know.
that
Like there
some
was
older
churches I
person has
served.
left.
There was churches I served. There were like 4 people, but they say they were because it was family money and they had enough to keep it going. I'm like, look, you're
There's no point.
like you're gonna die. Like I can't.
Hmm.
I can't unless we're willing to like do outreach stuff. It's like, oh, we want to do everything the same way. I'm like, no, you can't do that. You gotta do something different. Obviously, your family's the only one that comes here still. We need something else to make this survive.
I don't know if I've said this on the podcast, but I say this. I preach at this little tiny church. I mean, they're not tiny. They've got maybe like 20 on a good Sunday. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And which, I mean, that's small, but I don't think it's that small. But I told them, I say this every time at the end of the sermon. I say, if every one of you brought one person, it's just one person, you double the size of your church. And you've already made that personal connection with that one person.
Right.
So you can start introducing them to the other people in the church. So that's part of that attraction. You don't have to have these, your hospitality doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be like, we're going to have all these big events and stuff like that. Sure, that gets a lot of people, but what is a better genuine connection is when you're bringing that person to church.
Do a study. See, do an event like that and see how many people
Mhm.
come back from that event versus if you have the same number, if you have your team or your congregation go for the same number of people outside of the event and bring them in. What's the difference of how many people you actually get to come back?
Exactly.
Logic says that the event, maybe 1 to 5% come back. I don't know these numbers for specific, but it's really, really small amount. Versus, you might get like 10-20% the other way, which, that's a sizable difference.
Mm-hmm.
It's because you made that connection with somebody versus, hey, we're doing this shindig. We have a pumpkin spice latte here in September. If you want to come around and you have a pumpkin spice latte, cool. They come for 4 weeks and then you stop doing it for like a hazelnut something, and they're like, I don't like that coffee, so I'm gonna go somewhere else so I can get my pumpkin spice.
Well, it all boils back down to like everybody used to say the way you get people in church is you get their kids in church. And I mean, I think that used to work, and I think it still works a little bit. But honestly, you got to talk to it turns more to the adults now that you have to talk to. You have to get them to want to have their kids in church. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's my opinion. I don't know about you. I don't know if do you believe that the kids come first, or do you believe that you hit the adults first?
I think it depends on the generation because with our generation who have, to use your favorite term, that are wounded worshipers, it is so hard for us to want to come back. Let alone when we have kids, or when some of us already have kids. We're like, I can teach them good morals. Like I know all this stuff. Like I don't need to have this institution that is teaching my child. Like that I can get by. Like I'm living a good life. They don't need to have that. We've lost that connection there. So I don't think the kid targeting the kids now would work. Back in the day, yeah, because you're triggering those people who had really good experiences in youth group. They're like, oh, that was so much fun. We played Chumby Bunny with marshmallows. Like that was so much fun. And
Mm-hmm.
like I want my kids to experience that. Or we went to this like really cool Christian concert that I really enjoyed, and I found one of my favorite bands. Like they should be able to experience that too. That's what brought the kids in at that point in time. Now, our generation has some of those experiences, but we're not like, yeah, this is a fundamental part of who I am. So, eh. Until we make it part of who we are at a base level, we don't care. That's just how we are.
Mm-hmm. I think, which I've talked to a lot of people that are like the same way you just said, where they're like, well, I've got good enough morals. I'll teach my kids and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that our generation has got that mindset of like, I don't need God. I can teach my own morals to my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're just going back to like, the Tower of Babel kind of like discussion in the Bible. I mean, we're going back to where people are like, you know, they're not searching for God. They're searching to like renew their life morally, which is crazy. because um, I just think that I got all my morals through church, and my parents got all their morals through church, which I learned some of my morals from my parents, but um, the fact that they had to learn that in church, you know,
Hmm.
that sets a foundation. Now you can learn other stuff from your parents, but I think you need to have that, general foundation. And I think that's not attracting people anymore, which is sad.
Hmm.
Um, because that used to be like a major attraction to churches that, like, we have good morals. We have, um, and I'm not saying that like the churches, all their beliefs are like good ones. You know what I'm saying? But I'm saying that the churches can always lay good foundations to a life. So
Hmm.
I would say that that's what we need to get back to, attracting people. But I don't think churches are going to be able to do that. I think that people just need to have a turn in mindset now back towards laying that moral foundation, which I think it'll take a generation, because we'll have to see how bad this generation is, or we'll have to see like uh, the bad things that happen. But I don't know. I think that churches are doing better at attracting people. But I think I think specifically our non-denominational churches are doing way better than our denominational churches in attracting people. Which I don't really know, because I'm not a non-denominational person. What do you think that they're doing better, Matthew?
I don't know if I would think they're doing better, honestly.
Oh, would you? Would you not?
I don't think so. It's the so I mean they're doing like 5% better, maybe, if that. It's really the churches that are like minority ethnic based. So like your persons of color, your um people in the LGBTQIA plus spectrum, those kinds of churches. Um, Asian churches, they're really big in the area that I'm in. They're doing great. Um, those minor like not white American civil religion
Yeah.
churches are doing well because they are building on the one aspect that we are completely not doing in those other churches, which is building an actual community.
Hmm.
We are not like it goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning of this episode. It's intentionality. They are intentionally like, oh, we are going to care about your children. We're going to care about you. We're going to care about your parents. We're going to care about the things that are important to you and what makes you
Hmm.
you, and help you walk with you during your faith journey, because we're going to build each other up, because as Paul says, iron sharpens iron. There's a little bit of our scripture so we can have some in this episode. Um, but like those things are there because that's how the church is supposed to be. Like Jesus didn't walk around with 12 dudes because they were just random people. He liked those people, that they were part of a
They were his
group, that
friends.
they were his friends. Yeah, they were his friends. They were his closest friends. Like you don't just live 3 years with people you don't like
Hmm.
for the sake of living with them and teaching them. Like, sure, he was an educator and he kind of had a little bit of a higher status in their friend hierarchy, but they were friends and he treated them as friends and as equals, not as lesser.
So I guess the foundation of our episode this week would be, we need to make friendships and not just acquaintances. Let's make them acquaintances and then make them friendships.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think we've talked about a lot of good stuff though this week.
Yeah.
Because the reason I wanted to bring this up was because I had went to a church a couple weeks ago, and we had one person talk to us the whole time we were there.
Oh my
We
gosh.
came in, they said hi. They did the regular hi. You know what I'm saying? Where like you just walk in and they just wave at you. They did that, which I don't consider that hospitality. That's just saying, that's a normal just say hi. You made no connection with that person. You
Mm-hmm.
just vocally said hi. You know what I'm saying? So then we went in and sat down, and one person got up and actually like had a conversation with us. And it wasn't about faith or anything like that, but it was just like, happy you're here today. Like, why are you here? Like something like that. You know what I'm saying? And so I was like, and then we left him. You know what? My mom, the first thing she said, only one person talked to us. That was the first thing she talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And so that just proves that, people care about being talked to in the church. I mean, it's obvious. I mean, my mom, the first thing when we came out, it was one person talked to us. And so I think, that just shows that people who are visiting probably are thinking the same things, They're probably thinking, "Oh, they weren't very welcoming. I don't know if I want to come back." You know what I'm saying, like that.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I guess that was the reason why I wanted to have this episode because, um, I wanted people to start thinking like, are you talking with people in your church? Are you being hospitable? Um, I would say I'm not the best at it because sometimes, I'm like, I don't even want to talk to these people. I hate, I
Yeah.
hate talking to these people. Um, and like sometimes people come up and like say like, "Hey, how you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm doing great," and that's all I'll say. And I'm like, I think that's fine, but like sometimes people want to have a better conversation than that. So how do you think you've done that on that? Recently.
Well, I had that experience this week. I honestly don't think I did great. Uh, Self-reflection. I'm not the best person when it comes to like I'm an introvert. I'm not somebody who likes to have conversations with new people. But I
Hmm.
had the conversation. I'm like I did the best that I could in the moment because I wasn't thinking
Hmm.
about it. I'm like I just want to get out of this conversation. I'm like I don't. This is stranger. I'm done. Please let
Stranger
me.
danger.
Like I just got done with because like when you're working as part of like the team, the leadership team in the church and the worship team, like it can be stressful to do a service. And then you're like, all right, I just need to like decompress for a second. I didn't get that chance. And I'm like, I just need to like stop. So
Hmm.
they're probably not gonna come back. And that's on my bad. So I apologize if they're watching this episode. I'm sorry. I can be a better person and I'll do better. But I don't think like even somebody like me who has the training and knows what needs to be done still messes up and still can't do it. And you are right. Like you're going to remember how many people talk to you or how many or what it made you feel.
Hmm.
That's what you're going to remember. It's what made you feel, what you felt during that service. If one person talks to you, you're like, "Okay, I see how it is. You don't want me here. I'll leave." Not come back,
Hmm.
and they don't come back. So like I know we said earlier it takes one person, but it really takes a few to get through that. And you had brought up another really cool thing, and I'm like holding my fingers because it's keeping me to remember what I wanted to say. Um, there's a difference between being nice and being hospitable. Being nice is hey, hand wave. Being hospitable. So tell me about why you're here. Tell me about where you're at in your faith journey. I can tell you about myself. Here's this thing. Here's a cup of coffee. Let's go. Let's sit at this table and have a chat, kind of thing. There's a difference between being nice and hospitable, and we're not called to be nice. We're called to be hospitable. You could be the worst person and still be hospitable to people because you're actually taking time to be interested in that person. It might be for wrong reasons, but you're taking time to be nice to that person or learn about that person. Whereas being nice, you don't really care, and
Hmm.
that's what we need to do is
And I
care.
think it's a lot of that. I don't care when they're doing nice, because a lot of people they'll wave and say hi. They really just don't even care about that person. They're just doing it because it's like a human nature thing to say, to wave at someone.
It's
And so I
socially
think,
impolite not to.
yeah, exactly. And so I think that, and it's funny because like I think people can get more hooked on that than they can on the sermon.
Mm.
They may not remember a single thing that the pastor said in the sermon or anything like that. But if someone's had a conversation with them, they'll talk about that next week than they will talking about the sermon. And so I just think that it's, you know, in my personal opinion, um, that way of using hospitality is how we grow our churches. Um, Having a conversation. It
Mhm.
doesn't have to be, some crazy event or anything like that. I say this in sermons all the time. I say if you just talk to someone, they are begging to talk to you. There's some people that are so deprived of conversation that they are begging to talk to you. Um, I know uh, just getting to sit here and talk with Matthew on our podcast, that makes my day sometimes. I know it probably does for him too.
Mhm.
It used to be this is a very old way of thinking. It used to be, when you were worried about somebody or when you were just like thinking about them, you go and visit their house and stuff like that. You go visit with them. And
Mhm.
I think we can learn from that. I know people would think, that's an old way of thinking and stuff like that. But I think we can learn from that. I think we can learn that um, you know, having uh that mindset of thinking about people and thinking about their well-being can help our churches grow.
Mhm. And if that's uncomfortable for you, like going to visit somebody, use the new age technology version of that, which is sending a text, hitting them up in DMs, like sending them an Instagram reel of something funny. It's like, hey, I just thought that you would enjoy this because I'm thinking of you, um, or like give a phone call if you know them well enough. I think those methods of like I always love my friends from back home when they send. We have just a memes group chat and Instagram. It's like when I see one of them post a reel, I'm like, yes, they're thinking of my friend group or they're thinking of me. And like we don't keep in contact that much, but that's one of the ways like we touch base with
Hmm.
each other. And one thing that came to mind as you were talking is a quote from Maya Angelou that says, "At the end of the day, people won't remember what you said or did; they will remember how you made them feel." So if there's one thing I can tell you about this, it's like your whole talk about not remembering the pastor's sermon, but they'll remember how you made them feel. Yeah, we are humans that are built off of connections to deep emotional stuff inside of us. So if we don't get that satisfied, like that need's not filled, the church isn't working for us. So it's a part of everybody, and it's a part of the whole service. It's a part of the people who interact with you before and after. It's part of the reason why you should get to church more than 5 minutes or more than before the call to worship or opening prayer is happening.
Or 5 minutes
Um,
late.
if I yeah, it's a reason why you shouldn't just be like, well, I gotta go to the game that's right after this. Like you need to take the time to be intentional and care about those people because that's what's gonna make the difference in their lives and in their faith journey.
Let me just tell you one thing. This will be like my last thing because this is really cool. One thing that the old churches used to do, I don't know if new churches do it as much anymore, but I think it's so good, is they have a time of greeting. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
My church doesn't do it as much anymore, which my parents are kind of like, oh, we need to get back into doing that because it's cool. But you would just go around and shake people's hands, which that went away with COVID, obviously.
Yeah.
But still getting to say like hello to someone, in that church space, you get maybe like 5 minutes just to and sometimes it would last longer than 5 minutes because we'd have people in the back having a big old conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, you know, churches churches are a space that we can do that kind of stuff. I always say a church should be open doors, not a prison. You should be open to talk about whatever you want. You should be you know, open to anyone coming in. It should never just be a prison where you're just waiting for yourself to die. Um, and so I think that, in my opinion, we need to get back to that greeting of people. And it's not just saying hi; it's greeting them and saying, how's your day? How can I help you? You know what I'm saying?
How is it with your soul?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, in John Wesley terms. Well, I'm thinking about like this time, and like we do that time. at our church. It's called, most churches call it like a passing of the peace or something like that. It's in the middle of service. And I think one of the biggest obstacles to that right now is that we're such a go 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 society that, you get around a couple people, you're like, all right, back to my seat. Next thing's happening. We don't take the time to do it, and it's really hard for churches that are online based too. Like they have a live stream and an in person service simultaneously. That becomes an issue because if you're watching it online, you might have your family, which is maybe like your spouse or your kids or your parents or something like that. So you have like 5 people to be like, "What's up?" And you've probably already talked to them because you're all watching the service together. So it kind of limits that interaction. But I think if we guys not guys, if we guided that time in such a way that, okay, those of you who are at home, you've already greeted each other, obviously, because you're sitting here watching the same thing. If you're not in the same room, go talk to the other person in the other room and go watch the service with them first and foremost. But have it, like, talk about this conversation or have this conversation or actually have an in-depth conversation. Give that time, because I think our issue with this space, one, is that time constraint, but two, we're not actually like taking the time for what it was meant to be for. There's a Greek word, telos, which is the goal of, usually it's translated into law. So what Jesus is talking about is the goal is the telos of, but in this situation, the goal of that passing the peace or that time to be together is not for us just to go and shake a hand or give each other a hug or high five or handshake or anything like that. It's to go and actually interact and talk with the person. So if we're not doing that, that element of worship is useless, in my opinion. Not useless,
Well,
but it's not as effective as it could be.
yeah, I mean, I think we've hit it on pretty well.
Yeah, there's one more thing I
I
wanted
would
to
just
say.
okay.
And you go ahead. You were talking.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that I think the way we get rid of hospitality is we don't make it such a big topic. We make it more of like your hospitality should just be you personally talking with everyone, and I'm not just saying yourself. I'm saying the whole church should be picking out people that they can talk to. You don't have to talk to everyone in the church. You don't have to be friends with everyone in the church. You just have to make an effort to spread God's word, as I said. And that would be my thing on hospitality.
That ties into what I want to do, which I want to issue a challenge to our viewers. So if you are in a church situation and you're like, well, we're terrible at hospitality, I want you to organize a session. Say, we got an hour-long podcast episode I want to listen to. Let's listen to it as a group and have a conversation of it. Make it an hour-and-a-half session. Have them sit down, listen to this episode with them, and talk about hospitality and what we said. Because we're giving you the response of, what are we, Gen Z? We're giving you the response of like younger generations and what they feel and why, church and hospitality is so important. Listen to it and see what they feel. Like, maybe we do a good job, maybe we don't. Have that conversation, and it can be an opportunity to be like, okay, well, maybe we need to do some hospitality training. Maybe we need to actually think about the new people that are coming into our building. It can get overwhelming to talk for everybody in the church to come talk to this one person that's new. But if you are working together as a body, you can welcome that person in with the few people that maybe could go talk to that person.
Don't make that person feel uncomfortable though.
Yeah,
don't like everybody go talk to that person.
Yeah,
pick like 3 or 4 people who can go talk to that person. Because I've definitely been in a church where everyone went to talk to me, and I was like very uncomfortable. I was like, I don't need everyone to talk to me.
yeah, it's a balance. It's a balancing. But yeah, I would like to see you guys have that conversation. If you do a session like that, I want to know how it went, what your takeaways were,
Leave
how
some
you
of
guys
the
feel.
questions that came up. Leave some of the questions.
Definitely. Would love to see that, and leave questions that you have for us to discuss, because we want to continue to build on some of those questions as guides for future episodes this year.
Makes it easier to plan podcasts when we don't have to think about the ideas.
Yeah, we're
We
just
just
talking
bring
about
them
what we
to
want to
us.
talk about,
Yeah.
which is fine, but it might not be as fulfilling for you if it's not what you want to talk about. And this is part of us trying to be intentional and hospitable to you. If you're taking the time to watch, an hour of content every 2 weeks, we want to also recognize your time and listen to what you have to offer to us as well. Any final thoughts there?
Um, I just think we need just do better. Um, I'm very happy we had this episode because my mom had just talked to me about, hospitality, and so it kind of hit, it hit me deep. Not as deep as last episode. Last episode kind of went, a little too deep for me, But um it's cool to see that, like, God works in ways that, like, we talk about on our podcast. Sometimes
Mhm.
it's something that just happened during the week. Um but that's why I kind of want some of these comments so that way I can see if people are having the same, you know, daily thoughts as we have.
Mhm. So definitely leave those below. You can do that whether you're on YouTube. There's a comment section down below. It's easy to just type it in. There's also a Q&A at the bottom of the Spotify, so please go down there and do that. Thank you for listening on either of those platforms. And of course, if you want to interact with us on Twitter, if that's easier for you, to just get on your phone right now and send us a little quick tweet, you can add us at Salted Orange Pod on Twitter. We'd love to have you guys interact with us
Mhm.
that way. But I think that's really a good place for us to wrap up today's episode. I think it was a good, productive episode, and I'll let you know my experiences because I'm gonna go do some church viewing in a couple of weeks. So maybe not next episode, but maybe the one after that, maybe episode 9. I'll have some reporting back to do, and we might pick up another hospitality or church visitor podcast episode.
Mhm.
So we'll see about that. But we do thank you for taking your time to be here and listen to our thoughts and our words, as we've already said. Down below, comment, let us know what you thought. Let us know questions you had that we didn't answer in this episode, or questions that you brought up in your session that you did because you're a good listener and you went into an actual session where they listened through this podcast. And for those of you who are watching this listening to this after the fact, thanks for taking the time to come to this session and
Mhm.
listen to what we have to say. We will see you in a couple weeks for episode 8, which we don't know what it is yet, but we'll figure it out. So
Yep.
we'll see you then. Make sure you stay safe out there, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Bye.